There is a magic in the game feel of Fretless, and it's immediately noticeable. I love a pretty start menu, but I'm always a bit skeptical of them at first. Good start menus aren't always front doors to good games, but I was taken in by this one. I loaded into the game, met my first NPC, was given a guitar, and then a monster jumped out of the bushes and initiated combat. Fretless is a turn-based RPG where your weapons are musical instruments. The combat animates to the beat of the music, you play riffs rather than choose attacks, and the bit that really took me in was the way that Fretless uses QuickTime events. These QTEs are timed button presses that, in the case of Fretless, line up with the beats of the song that you're playing and either increase or reduce damage depending on who's attacking. As good as a parry or block in any other game might feel, nailing a series of QTEs in Fretless feels eerily similar to some of the best moments that I've had as a musician. Locking into these patterns, syncing up and performing alongside the game feels, in a small way, like singing with a choir full of people you know and trust. The kind of musical moment that makes your heart race. But the wild thing is that despite being a musical RPG from the very beginning of development 8 years ago, these QuickTime events weren't present until about a year before its release. This is a game that had so many chances to fail or to be something much lesser. But the team at Ritual Studios were relentless, and they've made something really special.
Well, I'll go. I'm Max, one of the 4 members of Ritual Studios. I do engineering on the game.
So I'm Jeff. I do audio and music for Fretless, and then like some of the game design as well. Like me and Max, kind of like everybody does a bit of everything on this project, if I'm being honest. So
cool.
Small team. It's only 4 of us.
We pitched Fretless as a guitar RPG, and it certainly is that. It's a music RPG where you wield instruments instead of swords and shields, and instead of casting magical spells, you play riffs.
Fretless: The Wrath of Rifson is a game developed by Ritual Studios and largely financed by music YouTuber Rob Scallon. It features Rob as the main character, but that element is less prominent than you might think. I enjoyed the game, having only ever heard of Rob in passing. Ritual Studios was co-founded by a handful of folks, including Jeff Linville and Max Lubbers. I had a chance to talk with them recently, and they told me about the journey to getting Fretless's QuickTime events feeling perfect. Somebody on your team had mentioned that PAX 25 was different than the year before, and that you felt that might have been because of Clair Obscur and the features that you had in this game. Does that match your thoughts?
That's probably, I feel like I remember saying that to somebody, or so we were talking about that, because people would come up and they'd be like, and like when we were explaining, like there's like QTEs in combat, you hit on the beat or whatever, and people were like, oh, it's like Clair Obscur, and I'm like, yes. That game blew up, and then people just like understood what we were doing without us having to explain it, because that game came out like right before PAX. It was kind of crazy, actually.
I finished Clair Obscur like right before PAX, and the thing that I felt playing your demo was I think you all have much better tutorialization of your.
Are you serious? I'm writing that down. I'm not joking. I'm writing that down because we had to redo it like so many times, and we've had so much bad feedback on it. It's gonna make Dave feel good.
I mean, I'm not a game designer.
You don't have to be. You're not supposed to be. You're a player, We struggled so bad with the QTEs too. Like we kind of like gave up. We were like, all right, we can't make it work because we're kind of like, we spent so long trying to get it to work. And then, the game kept going, and it was like, all right, we definitely need these. So like, let's kind of try again. And Max was just like, I'm just going to make like this thing like shrink around, whatever. We're just going to try it and we'll come back to it later. And then it just kind of like worked. And we were like, oh, thank goodness, because we tried so many different ways to do it, and
bouncing UI elements. It's like, like way too many in your face, like out of kind of takes you out of the world. Like just kind of all the things like we've had. Yeah.
It's gone through so many, and like the animations in the game, like Connor is he's so good at animating. Like the animations of our game, I feel like are so unique. I'm not an artist, so I can say that his work is so good and unique that we were like, we can't pull your eye like up to the top to like a blinking light or something, or like a UI element. Like we need you looking at these animations because they're so cool, and they're also like on beat, so
So
It kinda
this is
just
what I'm
worked out.
talking about. This is like the game feel is incredible. And it's like I had a question that was like, hey, how much do you think about game feel? It sounds like a lot. Because one of the issues that I had with Hi-Fi Rush, which I think is an incredible rhythm-based game, was exactly what you said. It pulls your eyes away from the things that actually matters in like really critical moments, especially when it's like teaching you about the rhythm of the game. It's like showing, it has this meter. The meter is helpful, but it is also distracting, right?
We tried it.
Yep, we did try the Hi-Fi Rush meter. It was
Yeah,
cool.
we totally tried it.
But we definitely the feedback of like, hey, I'm actually just looking at this meter was like pretty immediate, you know.
Yeah.
But I also think, you know, games like Hi-Fi Rush, they are like so visually stimulating in general. You know, I don't think we were like hitting. Our game wasn't the same style where it was like periphery. You could do is like capable. You didn't have to necessarily look directly at the meter, I think, in Hi-Fi Rush because the game is like blasting you.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, our
so
game is one
like,
thing at a time type thing. So
we kind of simplified our vision, and Jeff was saying, Connor, really with the animations and the audio too. Like, if you like watch any skill, the character moves, and then they're like hanging in the air, and then the audio will be like, so it's very informative of like when you're going to hit that beat, both visually, auditory, and then you've got the green outline. So we just kind of aimed for those like impact moments, and then kind of Connor just like we dressed around it.
I heard in another interview you said that you didn't have that element in battles until you kind of got feedback at a convention. What made that suggestion good enough for you to pick it up versus like any other kind of player feedback?
So it was one of those things like when you're working with like, you know, production timelines and stuff. We had, when we first got the publisher, it was like, we're going to try this. And then we tried it for like a while, and then we kept trying it, and it just like wasn't working, like I said before. And then we were just like, all right, we're just going to like, we can't figure it out. We can't get it good with the time that we have. So it's just kind of like, we have to move on and, you know, try to do something else. And then we went to PAX, and we didn't have it in our first PAX demo. We got a few comments from people that were like, I wish I could like hit. And we were like, well, yeah, we have the crescendo, you know, you can hit during, that was always there. The crescendo was always part of it. We never really changed that. And then it was kind of like, we got that feedback from PAX, and then like the demo was up on Steam and people were like kind of saying it. And then we kind of like, just became really obvious that it was like, I want to do this. I need to do this on the beat, you know? And like, we just were like, all right, we gotta like try it like one more time. Like we're better than we were a year ago at like developing, and like, maybe we can do it. Like, cause like I improved a lot with my like quality of my audio, like Connor's animations got really good. They were always good, but they got like even better. And like, we were just like, all right, let's, with our full force of our, you know, development skills, let's give it a go. And it was just kind of like, yeah, we're just going to spend like a week on this or something and do a really quick prototype. And it like, I don't know, it just worked, I guess.
Yeah. And it wasn't actually, not to keep harping on that, but it wasn't just like a design decision that we were like, all right, we got to add this and it's going to be good. And then we just like built that. It was actually like, again, with the art and the audio and the, you know, the messaging of the whole thing, once that like clicked and we felt good, like I think we probably we had multiple riffs. We had a lot of stuff made. So we compared like two instruments, like which one's more fun, you know, the acoustic where you're tapping on these skills, or just the bass where you're just like watching it play out. And it was very obvious. Like they figured out a formula to make these cool as an asset. So then we just like went full ham in there, made a whole bunch.
Yeah, it was like doing the prototype and then figuring out a way that we could consistently repeat it with every riff and every enemy in the game. And then once we figured it out, we went back and edited every single sprite, every character, every riff, every instrument. Like it was a big undertaking, but it was clearly totally worth it. And like, I can't even imagine the game not having that anymore.
Yeah.
It was like, it just felt like it was like too big for us at the time or something. Like we weren't able to do it. And I don't know, we just tried again.
In Fretless, you play Rob, and he's on a journey to take down the evil record label head Rick Riffson by winning a battle of the bands that's hosted by Riffson's Super Metal Records. On the journey, you collect several instruments. You start with an acoustic guitar, you pick up a bass next, then find a synthesizer, and lastly, you get an 8-string guitar. Combat is turn-based, but it plays out a little differently than you might be used to. Instead of just picking moves, you're given a random assortment of riffs. Each turn, you place up to 3 of these riffs, and once you've committed to them, each of them plays the associated music and animations. As they play, you have the chance to increase their effect by pressing a button that lines up with a green highlight and a musical beat. You have passive effects that you can set up before battle that are represented by guitar pedals, and you can mod your instruments to increase synergies between your riffs. It's part deck builder and all RPG. That they managed to marry these mechanics to the game's musical themes, I think, is a miracle. We were talking about it being a deck builder, but like, when did that happen? Was there something that made that happen, or was it always that way?
So the original combat was not a deck builder, and it was more like we were really inspired by Divinity Original Sin, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
So the combat was some kind of like weird fusion of that, but it wasn't like musical. And then we started like pitching the game, and people were like, the idea is cool, but like the music elements just like not there. So Max was kind of like, hey, like what if we like do like kind of like a deck builder, and you like queue up your skills, but the skills are like pieces of music. And it was like, oh, there it is. That's what makes the game good, you know? So that was like, we were immediately like, okay, drop everything. We're restarting basically like the combat system. And we just like made a prototype as soon as possible. And it was clear that it was like the right path. And then the deck building part of it was also like, you don't want to hear the same sound over and over and over for like every ability. Like if you're playing Divinity of Sin, you have like 8 skills that you use when you make your build. Like we needed the randomness of a deck builder. So like kind of the music kind of informed that design decision, oddly enough. And then plus like, you know, we're big fans of those games anyway. So it was just kind of like, it just made the most sense for what we were trying to do with the project.
Uniquely to our game, I think this is actually a really interesting fact, is that when you're in combat, you're strategizing your riffs. So you're like thinking what you should do. But then you're hearing this music, and then you play your riffs like maybe on your first turn, and then you hit the buttons on the beat, and then your head starts to bob because you succeed. Your strategy worked. You succeeded on the buttons. You're there. It's kind of like when you're like at a concert, and like once you start getting into it, you're like, oh, now I'm kind of along. And I think it kind of mixes that like confirmation of like making good choices and strategizing and like doing something good. Like I think people just like to do things well, right? And then when that hits, and then you're hearing music, and you realize, I think it kind of like carries you into your sort of like feel of like, this feels good. Yeah. And I think the sound design is 100% responsible for that, because it's literally carrying you through the beat of the combat track.
Just the theme of the game just like allowed the creativity to just kind of pour out of us in a way that is like really, really cool, I think. So like the game is about music, so it's just so easy to be like, oh, just put music on that, and it just works. So
yeah. Totally.
That was really helpful.
We needed to figure out the combos to make people lean into like, I want to use 4 of these. And we needed to figure out how to make a deck builder system work with like a progression element. So one major component of our game is you don't level up like in RPGs. And that allowed us to sort of build the game around you getting powerful based off of if you have access to maybe this particular synergy.
Got it.
Yeah, that's so the synergies is the big part of it. And there's mods that you can put on the instruments. And then there's pedals that are like also, synergy boosting things. And then it's like, what if somebody just wants to play with the acoustic the whole time and they just hate every other instrument? How do we make sure that they're having fun doing that and like getting like new things for that instrument the whole game? Whereas in a deck builder, you just get it as you go and then you reset. So that was,
you're speaking my language. I love to make a build. I love that was to huge. Just like get really excited about something and just build towards it.
In the design, it was like build around riffs. These are the riffs that you will like, you'll see this riff and you'll know that you need to like do that. They like put riffs in that are like and then there's like these kind of secret build around riffs that are like, they might not seem that good. And then you kind of like figure it out.
Sleepers.
So that was, secret riffs.
Sleeper.
They're not that secret, but like, there's like these kind of like tertiary synergies too that aren't just around these like big, like in the demo you can do this like shield slam. I don't know if that's like the first one we show you. It's like you build up shield and then you spend the shield with the shield that you like with this riff at the end, and that's kind of like to teach you what like the language that we're using of like, hey, you're gonna see these riffs and you're gonna try to like
but it
build
also
your deck around this.
Yeah, so then you get that at the beginning of the game, and how you keep it interesting is maybe later on down the road you find, like Jeff said, the tertiary riffs, or maybe even a mod, and it's like it sort of takes that riff that essentially leveled you up at the beginning of the game. You got that riff, you're like, I'm leveled up. Later in the game, you find something else, and it sort of like levels that riff up, which sort of creates this whole new like access to like a way to handle combat with that old familiar flavor from the beginning of the game. So our level up system just kind of is in your sort of like how much you really want to pay attention to which ones you're using and stuff.
I've talked a lot about the feel of the combat, but something that I noticed pretty early was that it just feels good to move around in this game.
Our game was boring to walk around in. You're like, oh no.
For a long time.
We thought we had it figured out, and it was just so boring.
It was boring. The maps were like massive, and like it was just that took a long time too to get right. And like I still don't even know. Like we designed the maps.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
either.
I'm like, I'm putting a chest here, because of whatever. I want the player to come up here and like see, but I can never experience that as a player. So I just have to like kind of hope that it works, and you get, you see that chest and you go for, and like you see the bellflowers in this way and you're going to go run through them. Like, it's really hard for us to like get that experience. We just are like, we built, we know what it looks like. You ever see a game where it's like they no clip it and it's like zoomed out of the editor and you're like, what, this isn't even a game anymore. This is like, I don't know what this is. That's kind of how it is. So it's nice to hear that, is what I'm trying to say with that long-winded tangent.
It's not just the size of the environments, though. The game is kind of perfectly sized. I've seen reports of people playing it in around 6 hours. Personally, it took me about 10, largely because I played an early build that got me stuck at a certain boss for a while, but also because I just kind of sucked at it until I learned what I was doing. But still, I beat the game in 2 evenings, and just as I thought it might start to overstay, it was over. Fretless is a game that is just fun, and frankly, that makes it kind of hard to review. I could nitpick, of course. For example, the game has a stealth sequence near the end that I really could have done without. No game that is not primarily a stealth game needs a stealth sequence. But also, I don't think nitpicking is that interesting. I tend to like reviewing or talking about games that have something I can chew on, whether that be interesting thematic elements or a core issue that I don't enjoy. But Fretless doesn't have any of that. It's just a great video game, and it doesn't have ambitions to say anything deep about music or the world, other than some comical takedowns of record label execs born out of Rob Scallon's YouTube universe.
Rifson was a character from Rob's channel, obvious villain for like a music RPG, right? Like the evil record label person who's stealing all the music. I mean, that was right there. So that we started there and kind of worked backwards from there. And yeah, I wouldn't say we're trying to really say anything with the story. And maybe I think that was kind of a conscious decision in a way, because we're just like, we just want the game to be just like kind of fun, and we want the game to be like really funny. So like the dialogue has an emphasis on being like kind of cheeky. We break the fourth wall. Yeah, sometimes, it's not annoying, but it's just like just silly and like fun, I think. And that was kind of the aim of the game, because I think
we weren't trying to like highlight a particular music genre in any positive or negative light or anything like that. We wanted to just sort of like, music is used to kind of get away. So we weren't trying to bring a focus on any particular message that, beyond like what's happening in the game.
That's pretty much it.
No, yeah, I think that like humor is a version of doing something deeper. Not everything has to have like the I don't know, like the deepest meaning in the world. Sometimes it can just be like, let's have a good time.
It's just fun and funny. Yeah. And like Rick Rifson's character is just like hilarious. And it was just so easy for our writer to just like make him say all these like really funny jokes and stuff. And we were just like, this is great. This is just so fun. Like when we're reading the dialogue, when we're getting it in, I'm just like laughing. I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, and that was super fun for us, because we really wanted the music to be like the focus of the game. And so I like, we poured our hearts into the game as far as like the musical references and like the bellflowers, like that stuff is like the most important.
To me, the thing I can't stop thinking about is that Fretless got made at all. Over on Rob Scallon's channel, he did a documentary with a team, and the whole premise of that video is that they were running out of money and struggling to find a publisher. And then they pushed just one more time, and it worked. But what I mean is that it's nuts that a video game like this can be made by an indie team to begin with. Like, that the tools even exist to make Fretless is kind of unbelievable. I feel like this year I'm seeing music games way more than I've seen in like 10 years.
We're kind of blown away by that. We saw that too. There was like many music games at PAX, and we were like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, you all were in 6-1 Indie recently, and I think there were like 5 in
They
that
had a
showcase.
whole section about music games,
Yeah.
and we were like, what is happening?
Yeah. I mean, like, we've got Unbeatable coming soon, a game that I'm really excited about. Rift of the Necrodancer just came out. We saw Luminous. We had a new Luminous announced today. What do you think's going on? Do you have any thoughts about what's going on? Why is this all at once?
I think they're cool.
no
I
idea.
mean, I think it's also the same. It's like before, it was like an all Guitar Hero kind of spin-offs, and like the rhythm is like pretty,
Yeah.
you know, you think of like music game, you're like, okay, hard rhythm. And then Crypt of the Necrodancer really expanded like the perspective a little bit. It was hard rhythm. You know, you can still be competitive with it, like the DDR mats and all that. If you were to watch like how many games there are over time, I think it just maybe now it's getting a little bit more of a attention. You know, I think there's probably been music themed RPGs in the past, but probably like you're like a bard in medieval times or something, you know, and now it's kind of like, yo, people love music. So it could just be the time period. It could just be people are making more games.
I have a hunch that it's partially because we're just at a stage of indie game development where people can do so much now that people are like just like interested in and feel capable of making things that they don't feel like they could have in the past. And so that's why we're like seeing weird swings, right? Like when Unity became a thing, we had a lot of Viking simulators because that was like an easy thing to do. But now we're at the stage where like, I don't know, like you just said, we have Necrodancer or we had Balatro or whatever it might be. Like people are doing wild stuff that you don't expect in indie games. And now rhythm games or music games more generally feel attainable, maybe.
Yeah,
I agree.
Because you can just download Fmod, you can download Unity, you can make exactly what we made in Fmod, all for free, you know, just by doing that, if you want to. So, and then like it's also weird though that like we started the project like 8 years ago, and then now it's like about to come out. It's like, whoa, there's all these other games too. That's crazy. So maybe Hi-Fi Rush like inspired people like 3 years ago, and they're like,
I think that's part of it. I don't think that's not a part of it. You know?
Yeah, because it is really unique. It is when we saw that, it was kind of like, this is the first game that's just like built music into every inch of its body. Like we used to reference like Brutal Legends. That was like, that game, like, you know, that game. But Hi-Fi Rush was like, it is kind of similar. It's like the world is music. Like everything in the world is music, and it's very inspiring and like super cool. And you can just link any animation to the same timing as a beat, and it looks awesome. So
yeah. Fretless nearly didn't get made. Ritual Studios nearly ran out of money years before they would release the game. The tools they used to make the game have really only recently reached a level of maturity that would allow a game like this to be made at all. And the best part of the game, the QTEs and riff-based musical combat, didn't come together until the very end of the game's development. There are many other possible universes where Fretless never comes out or is a much worse game than the one that we got. But they weren't afraid to keep pushing, and they weren't afraid to throw it all out and start over again. And that's something I know a little about. I really recommend that you check out Fretless, The Wrath of Rifson. The full interview with Jeff and Max is up on my Ko-Fi for monthly supporters, and in that one we got way nerdier about music tech than I'm comfortable getting on the channel. You should go check it out. Thanks again to Jeff and Max for talking to me, and thanks to their publisher, Playdigis, for the review code. And hey, if you're here at the end, then you've probably been with me for a really long time. There's been a lot of changes recently. We're on a brand new channel today, and I really appreciate your support. So I have a few asks for those of you that are listening to this part. 1, like the video on YouTube and leave a comment. 2, subscribe to the channel. I'm building back completely from zero, and if you want to see why, I'll link my explanation that's over on the old channel in the description. And 3, if you can, head over to ko-fi.com/Matt Horton and set up a monthly donation, even just $1. But Ko-Fi lets me make videos on games that are probably not going to do well on YouTube, but that I feel really passionately about making. Thank you so much for all your support, and I'll talk to you next time.